When we first unboxed this guitar, the frets were toast. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Well, it's been a long time coming, but we are finally going to review the 2005 Gibson Music Rising Les Paul. This has a huge backstory, so if you're ever confused of why these weird satin finish Les Pauls sell for so much more than a regular Les Paul standard of the era, you'll be glad you tuned in today. So first, let's talk about Music Rising. This is a charity that U2's The Edge co-founded with producer Bob Ezrin, as well as some other music industry partners. They formed this charity in 2005 to help musicians get back on their feet, as well as replace their damaged instruments and support music education due to Hurricane Katrina. Now, Hurricane Katrina is one of the biggest storms that I personally remember. It caused over $100 billion of damage and had at least 1,400 reported fatalities. So with all that damage, musicians definitely needed help. This is Louisiana. Music is embedded in their culture. So Music Rising went to Guitar Center and said, hey, can we do an exclusive model with you guys in Gibson? So that's right. This was a Musician's Friend / Guitar Center exclusive. And all 300 of them featured the colors of Mardi Gras. Now, the way I understood it is they just lined all these guitars up and started slapping paint on them at the factory, having a good time. Because no two of these are alike. Enjoy the plethora of designs that you're seeing. Some examples are more attractive than others, but they tend to have a variety of blue, yellow, purple, some pinks, and green hues blended into them. Personally, I've always really liked this one, but it was the very first one that I ever saw. And because I think it kind of looks like that iconic 90s, early 2000s cup. Collectors tend to prefer ones that have a wide variety of colors and not just like predominantly yellow with a little splash of something in the middle. So in that way, it kind of makes them like spotlight specials. There are collectors out there that buy all the ones that they see that they particularly like, just like there's crazy spotlight fans out there. But art is very subjective. They're all beautiful to someone. This particular example, I liked it because it had a lot of blue. It had a nice blending of colors. Yeah, you could argue it's maybe a little bit too much yellow over here. But as far as what I've seen, I don't mind keeping this one around. But when I say they just slap the paint on these things, this is stock from the factory. Like, you just get random black splotches on the back, and these were satin finished guitars. So that means it's not super glossy. And most of these did not get played. But if you were to play one, the satin finish will buff up into a slightly more semi-gloss. The reason I bring up that these are satin finishes is 2005 is the first year that Gibson did the faded series on the Les Paul Standard. So these are technically first year standard fadeds before they started to do the chambering weight relief, but they have the dull finish instead of the gloss that you're seeing over here. But they've got that special coloring to them. But in my research of this model, I learned something brand new besides it being a Guitar Center exclusive. These have wooden parts on it where it's usually plastic. Now, our pickup rings are still plastic, so it's not like a The Les Paul where it gets all the cool stuff. But check out your pickguard here. It says Music Rising, and that is a wooden layer sitting on top of plastic. Your toggle switch poker chip is also made out of wood, including your truss rod cover, and even your back plates. But these were woods used from disaster areas. All the trees and whatnot that got destroyed among the various states, they would send them to Gibson or whoever does their stuff for them and get them processed into these. So this is actual Katrina destroyed wood on these instruments. And whenever you mix in wood that has sentimental value to it or history, it makes it interesting. It's kind of like the old Hickory Les Paul that we documented in this episode, being wood from a fallen biggest ever tree on the estate of a former president. When I first saw these things and got into the guitar market, they were like $3,000 to $4,000 guitars. Lately, I've been seeing them list between $6,000 and $10,000 plus, some of them actually getting that much. So that makes this one of the most expensive Gibson USA products on the collectible used market. Make no bones about it, these are mainly collector's pieces. You're much better off just getting a regular Les Paul Standard for like $2,500, whether it be a 2000s era one or a 50s, 60s original collection if you want solid body. Because if you're a collector, I told you that there were 300 of them made, so naturally you might be interested in number 300 or number 1 as far as special numbers go. But no, there were actually 36 of them hand-selected by The Edge that he signed on the top, signifying that was one of his favorites that came out of the run. 14 of those 36 were offered for public sale. The other 22 were given to local New Orleans musicians. So you don't see those things show up too often, and those are the examples that typically fetch the most. However, at the time of recording, the Edge is still with us, so you could technically take one to his concert, have him sign it up here, because I don't think those ones got special case candy. I could be wrong. I'm not really sure if there is a good way to verify that it was one of the hand-selected ones out of that run. It's possible he might have signed more of these after the fact. But if you like Music Rising and you want a guitar that adorns that logo, there is a slightly cheaper option. There was a black Epiphone version, also a Guitar Center Musician's Friend exclusive. Now at first, it just looks like one of those doofy promo guitars. On the body, it has the Music Rising logo and says Instruments for the Gulf Coast. And then on the headstock, it says Rebuilding Music by Music, using actual music notes on it. Yet, set neck construction, kind of like a Les Paul Special, but it has humbuckers rather than B90s. And it's got binding everywhere, and 100% of the proceeds went to the Music Rising Foundation, and those did include a COA signed by the Edge. So I certainly don't expect everybody to love and appreciate these things, but I hope this video helps you understand why people are asking and paying crazy amounts for these. Now, unfortunately, the survivors don't necessarily get the money from the resale market, but that's not usually the case anyways. So let's go ahead and throw this one on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the Mardi Gras model, let's go ahead and take a look. So remember, when I first got this thing, it was not taken care of in the slightest. So we got all this weird stuff on our pickup covers. The frets were completely black, as I had shown you at the beginning of this episode. But here's what it looks like now after a double fret polish. It's still not perfect, but it's much better than what it was. But the best transformation has to be the toggle switch's skirted ring right here. I thought for sure that would have to have been replaced, but it actually cleaned up surprisingly well. And I actually had somebody question, are you sure that it's not supposed to be like that because it's the Hurricane Katrina model? And that kind of made me start to think, yeah, maybe. So I had to look at other ones and no, I don't believe so. But the whole flood disaster thing made me think, you know, maybe I should leave a little bit of patina on these because I could have went crazy, but then maybe they wouldn't match. So I just left it like this. This one's mine. I can do whatever I want. So neck pickup here. A fan seri wound burst bucker 1, and in the bridge pickup cavity, burst bucker 2. Our patent applied for decal is about ready to fall off, so we're just going to leave that alone. As far as the pickup cavities go, it looks like they might have taped those off so they wouldn't get paint in them. Kind of shocking they would take the time to do the cavities, but not the back of the guitar. But there you can see the maple top joining onto our mahogany body, and you can see some of the router chatter marks right here. No other markings that I see. The bridge reads 8.21 k ohms, the neck position 7.6, and just for fun 3.94 in the middle. The bridge is the regular Nashville style one, PW branded. And here's what our tailpiece is looking like. It is a full weight one with the casting mark across the entire back, as is common in this era. As far as our controls, it's just 2 volumes, 2 tones, all standard stuff. You can see there's some internal cracking to these plastic knobs. If you really look, most Les Pauls have at least a little bit of that. But now let's talk about how they finished these things. Earlier I said they just took paint buckets and went whoosh, because that's the story I first heard about these. And I think there is some truth to that, but I don't think it was quite as haphazard as that suggests. So looking right here, I see actual brush strokes. So what I'm hypothesizing is they actually had a base coat to these models that they brushed on. That way they each had their own unique look to it. But then after the base colors, like the yellow and then the purple on this one, then they started flinging paint around to get a little bit extra color in it. Because like this purple area, it's a little bit more bunched up. It reflects light differently. So that would be my best guess of how they did the whole splatter paint technique. And it makes sense why paint got all over the back of the guitar. I found it interesting that there's a couple areas right here by the neck that doesn't have any finish at all. But maybe somebody that was there can chime in on how they did it. But if you can look past all the beautiful colors here, there is a flame top as we were looking at earlier. But the satin finish doesn't really help bring it out that much. But now let's check out this pick guard. Music Rising on it. So I already told you the origin of the wood. But wait till you see the back. It's literally just a normal pick guard that they slapped a relatively thin wooden veneer over top of. It's not paper thin by any means. The pickguard is the only wooden part that gets the plastic backing though. So what that means for you is you get the raw wood feel. I'm sure it has a light finish over top of it, but it's never going to warp on you because it's glued to plastic. But that's also another cool thing about these is the wood grain of the back plates and the pickguard varies example to example. Like this one has a cool little knot in the wood right here, but we'll look at the other ones a little bit later. Two-piece maple top, mahogany body, mahogany neck, rosewood fretboard, 22 medium jumbo style frets, regular trapezoid inlays made of a pearloid material, typical 24 3/4 inch scale length, matched with a 12-inch fretboard radius. And we've got a nut width of 1.67 inches. That increases to 2.04 by the 12th. First fret neck depth is 0.82, 0.88 by the 12th, so that's definitely a slim taper 60s neck. Which if you're not familiar, in this era they had 50s neck and 60s neck standards. Here's what that neck looks like at the first fret and 12th fret, just a slim C, nice and rounded. As far as condition, there's like some weird stuff. That might actually be like paint or something, I'm not sure. If not paint, like some oil. There's also some like interesting tooling marks around here. Being charity guitars, they didn't imagine anybody would return it over some issues like that, I guess. And now that I'm looking at this thing with more of a fine-tooth comb, they did a very bad job at scraping this binding. And you can see tooling marks all the way up and down. Much worse than usual. These definitely seem a bit rushed in the fine details when you really get up on them. But from far away, they look nice. We've got our Les Paul model silkscreen with a Gibson mother of pearl logo, with our truss rod being in perfect shape. And now let's look at this cover. This one is actually just thick wood. It does not have a plastic back plate to it, but it is a lot thicker than a normal truss rod cover. I also noticed some spots in the headstock veneer. It's like something underneath it. It almost looks like the wood wasn't finely sanded enough, because you can see a lump right there underneath the veneer. Maybe they usually use the gloss coat to hide stuff like that. Now moving on to the back. It's the flat satin finish we've been talking about, but what you want to see is the back plate. What's cool about this one is it's got a little bit of flame figuring in it. Just kind of depends on your lighting situation. And looking at the back definitely shows us there is some sort of a light finish over top of them to give it that slightly more yellowed hue. And I like the lines for the toggle switch cavity cap. Pretty cool. As far as the electronics in one of these, it should look something like this. Gibson branded pots in all situations, with ceramic disc capacitors. Got a cream plastic output jack plate with a strap button at the bottom and at the top. And here's what we were talking about, just paint splattered all over the thing. Now to be fair, some are crazier than others. This one's fairly mild, but you can tell it got a little crazy up here in the cutaway area and a little bit on the edges. And oh yeah, especially on the neck. Now you might think, since this is a flat finish, isn't that going to be kind of uncomfortable? Well, most of these weren't seriously played, but these areas, it looks like they smoothed it out, so you really don't feel it too much. But like this one right here, it does stand a little bit proud on the neck. And then we've got a lot around here and over there. But this one is number 168 of 300, with a serial number dating it to the 313th day of 2005. Initial batch, 414th is its production number. Made in USA, with our Gibson vintage style Clusen Deluxe tuners with push-and bushings on the top. But definitely the most paint-coated area is the face of the headstock. Is that what those things were? Is that paint underneath it that they just applied the veneer on top of? That could be a strong possibility. All said and done, not a bad weight for a solid body one, 8 pounds, 13 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Alright, so that neck pickup is really mellow. But the bridge is nice and attacking. Now that we know all about the Music Rising Les Paul, what are my final thoughts on this? Is this something for a player? No, unfortunately the prices have just gotten way too insane on these things. It's more so a collectible instrument at this point. However, if you happen to pick one up at a decent enough of a price, it's essentially just a Les Paul Standard Faded, with kind of a unique paint job and an interesting story behind it. So it's got the Les Paul tone if that's what you're going for, and it's got some unique colors. So alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and enjoy your knowledge of the Music Rising Les Paul. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.